The polished oak doors of the prestigious Evergreen Academy boardroom swung open with a silent, weighty authority, revealing a scene of curated excellence. On the surface, it was a photograph of American meritocracy. A long mahogany table surrounded by influential men and women in sharp suits, their postures erect, their expressions a blend of ambition and calm assurance. A large screen behind them glowed with a multi-million-dollar budget proposal for a new innovation wing. This was the image they projected to the world, one of integrity, progress, and unwavering commitment to the nation's youth. But beneath that gleaming veneer festered a secret so profound, so insidious, that its exposure would not just topple a school, but would send shockwaves through the very foundations of educational, corporate, and governmental institutions across the country. This is not just the story of a single crime, but the unraveling of an entire ecosystem of corruption. By the end of this, you will understand how a seemingly isolated incident in a teacher's lounge was the loose thread that, when pulled, unraveled a conspiracy of epic proportions, implicating tech giants, corrupt officials, and a system designed to protect the powerful at the devastating expense of the powerless. Began with a single email. Sarah Jenkins, a dedicated and sharp-witted history teacher at Evergreen Academy, was trying to access an old curriculum file on a forgotten school server. The IT department, perpetually overwhelmed, had given her temporary admin credentials. Clicking through a labyrinth of digital folders, she stumbled upon one marked Zephyr Archives. It was password-protected, which piqued her curiosity. Using a common administrative password she'd seen on a sticky note in the tech office, she gained entry. What she found inside were not lesson plans, but spreadsheets. Endless, intricate spreadsheets. At first glance, they appeared to be complex budget allocations and vendor payments. But Sarah, who taught a unit on modern economic history, noticed anomalies. The amounts were staggering. Millions were being funneled to a shell company called Zephyr Innovations for proprietary educational software licensing. She had used the school's software. It was clunky, outdated, and certainly not worth 8 figures. Driven by a nagging sense of dread, Sarah cross-referenced the dates and amounts with the school's public-facing budget reports. The numbers didn't match. The public documents showed a fraction of the costs. She dug deeper, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She found internal memos discussing tiered student performance metrics and Project Chimera. One email chain between the school principal and the district superintendent mentioned optimizing demographic data for federal grant applications. The language was corporate, cold, and devoid of the educational idealism she held dear. She realized she wasn't looking at mere financial mismanagement. She was looking at a deliberate, sophisticated scheme to defraud the government. They were inflating costs, siphoning public funds through shell companies, and likely manipulating student data to secure grants they weren't entitled to. The crime was the fraud, but the conspiracy was the network of people who knew, who facilitated, and who profited. Sarah, believing in the system, took her findings to the principal, Dr. Alastair Finch. He listened patiently, a placid smile on his face. He thanked her for her diligence, called it a complex accounting matter she had misunderstood, and assured her he would look into it. The next day, the Zephyr Archives folder was gone, vanished. All access logs had been wiped. When Sarah tried to use her admin credentials again, they were disabled. A week later, she was called into a surprise meeting with the school board's head of human resources. They expressed deep concern about her declining performance in the classroom, citing anonymous complaints from parents about creating a hostile learning environment. They presented a fabricated dossier of incompetence. They offered her a choice: a quiet resignation with a modest severance package and a neutral letter of recommendation, or a protracted public termination for cause that would end her career. It was a brutal, coordinated smear campaign. The system was not just corrupt, it was self-defending, and it was willing to crush anyone who threatened its equilibrium. Terrified but furious, Sarah knew she was out of her depth. She went to the local police. They listened politely, took notes, and did nothing. The Evergreen Academy was the crown jewel of the community. Its board was filled with local luminaries. An investigation was quietly shelved, deemed a civil matter. This was the first major obstacle, the proof that the conspiracy's roots had already burrowed deep into local authority. Feeling utterly isolated, Sarah made a desperate decision. She reached out to an old college friend, Ben Carter, an investigative journalist for a major metropolitan newspaper who had a reputation for tenacity. Ben was initially skeptical. A corrupt school board was, sadly, not a new story. But when Sarah showed him the hard copies of the spreadsheet she had wisely printed, when she laid out the digital paper trail that had been erased, his reporter's instincts ignited. This wasn't small-time embezzlement. The sums were too large, the cover-up too professional. Ben, using his resources, began to peel back the layers. Zephyr Innovations was a ghost, a shell company registered in Delaware, which in turn was a subsidiary of a larger, shadowy holding company called Ether Collective. His investigation revealed that Ether Collective was a nexus, a central hub connecting several other private schools, charter school networks, and even public school districts in neighboring states. They all used the same proprietary software. They all showed similar budgetary discrepancies, and they all had ties to a powerful U.S. senator, who happened to be the chair of the subcommittee on educational funding. The software itself, Ben discovered, was the key. It wasn't just educational. It was a data mining operation of unprecedented scale. It collected everything on students. Not just grades, but biometric data from school-issued tablets, behavioral patterns, psychological assessments, and even private messages. This vast trove of data was being packaged, analyzed, and sold. The buyers were not just advertisers, but military recruitment firms seeking specific psychographic profiles, and corporate headhunters looking to identify and track high-potential children from a young age. The fraud was just the funding mechanism for a much larger, more terrifying enterprise: the mass surveillance and commercial exploitation of an entire generation of American schoolchildren. The story, when Ben and his newspaper finally broke it, was a seismic event. The initial article, The Ether File, Data, Dollars, and the Betrayal of Our Schools, named names, laid out the intricate financial trails, and exposed the data selling scheme. The public outrage was immediate and volcanic. Parents protested outside schools. The FBI, which had previously ignored tips, launched a full-scale federal investigation. This was the period of high-stakes suspense, as Ben and his team continued to publish, each article a new bombshell. They revealed how the software company had bribed state officials to mandate their product. They uncovered the think tanks and non-profits, funded by the same corporate interests, that published research praising the very systems they were selling. They exposed the senator, showing how he had crafted legislation that funneled federal money directly into the pockets of Ether Collective's clients, who then kicked back a percentage as consulting fees. The conspiracy was a Russian nesting doll of corruption, each layer more shocking than the last. The emotional peak, the moment that truly broke the story into the national consciousness and rewarded the world for watching, was the live, televised congressional hearing. The CEO of the tech firm behind the software, a sleek Silicon Valley visionary once featured on magazine covers, was on the stand. He had denied everything for months, hiding behind legalese and corporate policy. But then, the lead prosecutor presented Exhibit A, a single internal email from the CEO to his chief data officer. The subject line was, Project Chimera Harvest. The body of the email was chillingly concise. The predictive modeling on the Evergreen cohort is 94% accurate. We can now identify the future dissidents and the compliant workers. This is the product. Sell the compliance list to the corporations and flag the dissidents for further review. In that moment, the abstract concept of data mining, became terrifyingly real. It wasn't about selling sneakers. It was about social sorting, about predetermining a child's future and selling that future for profit. The CEO's face, broadcast to millions, crumpled from arrogant defiance to ashen-faced defeat. He took the Fifth Amendment, but the truth was already out. The room erupted. It was the climax of the entire scandal, the moment the lofty ideals of education were shown to have been sacrificed on the altar of surveillance capitalism. In the aftermath, the closure was sweeping but bittersweet. The CEO and several top executives were convicted on charges of racketeering, fraud, and violating federal data privacy laws. The senator resigned in disgrace and was later indicted. Dozens of school administrators, including Dr. Finch, lost their licenses and faced prison time. Sweeping new federal legislation, dubbed the Student Privacy Act, was passed, imposing harsh penalties for the misuse of student data. Evergreen Academy, along with several other schools, was shut down and rebuilt under new management. Sarah Jenkins was publicly vindicated and received a substantial whistleblower settlement. She became a leading advocate for educational integrity. Ben Carter won a Pulitzer Prize. Yet, for all the justice served, a profound unease remained. The scandal revealed that the systems meant to protect the most vulnerable, our children, were deeply permeable to greed and power. It showed how easily idealism could be corrupted by a compelling business model. The conspiracy was dismantled, but the conditions that allowed it to fester, the underfunding of schools, the blind faith in technology, the immense power of corporate lobbying, still remained. The school scandal was more than a crime. It was a national wake-up call, a chilling reminder that some threats don't storm the gates, but are quietly invited in, disguised as progress, and given a desk in the principal's office.